Welcome to Getting Made. Today, we're talking with the incredibly talented cinematographer Peter Simonite. His most recent film is Day of the Fight. It is in theaters now. Please do yourself a favor and go and see it this weekend. I would like to thank our sponsors really quickly: Nature's Wild Berry at nature'swildberry.com, Jaybird Coffee, jaybird.coffee.com, and Airwolf Drones at airwolfdrones.com. And now, an awesome conversation with Peter Simonite. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning. I know you're crazy busy right now doing the commercial in Connecticut and everything, so it really means a lot that you showed up, and I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. I'm excited to talk to you and grateful for you taking the time.
Dude, um, I saw your film a couple of weeks back. I think it was a week and a half ago, and I was like, I gotta reach out to Peter, and I gotta figure out like his backstory. I gotta figure out everything that went into this because this film was insanely powerful, and um, I think I texted you a little bit about the walkout scene and how it completely transported me right back to some experiences that I had had. And I was just like, man, you guys you nailed it. Like, you just knocked it out of the park with that. And I've got so many questions for you. And, hopefully this will be a spillover into some other conversation because I know you got to go shoot a commercial. But yeah, I'm curious as to everything that went into this film for you, and also, you know, how did your journey begin? What got you interested in film? Do you remember the moment that you were like, this is my tool, this is my craft? Give me some backstory there.
Yeah. I mean, where to begin? I'm curious what, like you said the walkout scene related uh, to things that you had experienced. That's such a great thing. I think that's great to hear because the intention, I think, of the film, or really of any film or a piece of art, is to connect with the audience's personal experience. And I'm curious what the experience was, and that
So
that
I was very blessed in that, like, I come from a fairly athletic background. I was, always doing sports and everything. And then when I got to school, I had to sort of hang that up a little bit because I had to work for my tuition and everything. But I ended up picking up Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu.
oh, cool.
And through that process, I ended up training with some like world class competitors. And one of those was a UFC champion. And so I was always shooting their commercials and their camp and everything. And when the time came for him to fight for the belt, to fight for the title, they were like, "Hey, like, you're already shooting all the time for us. Like, why don't you just shoot this doc?" And it was a very eye-opening experience, very arduous, grueling experience, but incredible. It's sort of like when you go through something that's so insanely intense, and you sort of, in a sense, trauma bond.
Yeah.
But I remember, I want to keep the focus on your film, but I remember the morning of the fight, as he was about to fight for the title in Mexico. I remember being on the floor of the bathroom in our hotel and just like on my hands and knees praying and being like, not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily for victory. It was more like, we've come so far. And there was actually a circumstance that was very similar to in your film, The Day of the Fight, where there was some complications. There were some medical complications that I can't really get into too much, but like, we were very concerned, and nobody outside of the fight camp knew. And so it was a very dangerous thing to go into this fight. And I remember, like, literally on my hands and knees in the bathroom, just praying that our guy was going to be okay. And this was a friend. This is a dear friend of mine, and it's weird because when you're competing and you're going through the mix and everything, you put yourself through so much stuff and you feel like, oh, I can handle it, no problem. But then when it's your friend, you worry about them so much more than yourself. And so,
Because you have such a lack of control in that situation. If it's you, you know what you're capable of, your limitations. But when it's someone you love, um, yeah, you feel it more. It's great that it connected with you on that level, this film, because I think that was really, sort of the central kind of idea is this idea of, you know, um, it's obviously all set in one day. It's the called the day of the fight. It's a film where you sort of know from the beginning what this character is holding on to, and the sort of secret that he knows about his health, and you get to experience how um with that knowledge as an audience, how he relates to all the different people that he's trying to sort of square up his relationships with and kind of make um wrongs right, and make amends, I guess, if you will. And then it all culminates in this moment. There's this sort of momentum to the film, with which we tried to express as actual motion, this sort of tunneling
Yeah.
through things or moving forward, and all of the sort of steady cam in the film has this kind of um inexorable motion towards his fate, if you will, and it culminates really right there at that walkout.
Hmm.
You know, he's sort of in this kind of overwhelming light of Madison Square Garden and kind of confronting this moment that he's been waiting for.
Yeah,
So
it's like that train you can't get off, right? The train is moving, you can't get off of it. It's going to its destination. Yeah,
yeah,
it's definitely the feeling. And you guys just, I was like, I actually went up to Ron afterwards because I was so moved by his portrayal.
he's great.
And I was like, there has to be some experience here in terms of being around fighters. There has to be. And so, of course, I was like, talking to Ron about this. I was like, yeah, man, the coach father figure that you displayed is like spot on, spot on. Like, most of these fighters have horrific relationships with their fathers. Not all of them, but some of them. And, um, and the way that he showcased that person that takes these broken people and like makes them into champions. You know what I mean? Um, I was just so incredibly moved by that. And then of course my composer told me, "Oh no, Ron's been around fighters. Like Ron knows
Oh,
fighters." And I was like, I'm an idiot. Like I just thought that like he was, not experienced in that. But obviously it was yeah, it was really eye-opening. And I'm so interested in the way that you work with that sort of the light rays, because that was something that really stood out to me.
yeah,
Um, it is kind of blinding. It's kind of like, you're almost walking into the light at the end of the tunnels, like quite literally. And that was just such a powerful moment that I was like, I, I have not had that sort of like, this is exactly what it feels like in the tunnel. And I was curious, as like you were talking about music, you were talking about how it's all culminating in this sort of like climactic swell. What's your background with music? Can you
yeah.
talk a little bit about that? How has that played such a pivotal role in your filmmaking?
I come from Austin. Austin is a big music town. So, I came up around a lot of friends who are musicians who've had very successful careers as songwriters and musicians, and I used to be in a band, and I've just always loved that kind of collaboration and the kind of artistic directness that bandmates can have. If you're in a band, you play drums or you play guitar or whatever, you're doing your part, but you're part of this collective thing that's greater than the sum of its parts, the
Hmm.
performance. And I definitely have viewed filmmaking through that lens of, we're all playing our part. Every filmmaker there, the focus puller, the gaffer, me, the actors, but hopefully you're making this sort of beautiful thing where, everyone's vision is aligned, and you're capturing the rhythm together and kind of delivering this kind of beautiful thing. And at its best, it can really be magic. And at the same time, the way that filmmaking works is really a director's vision, and so I really view my role as someone who does my very best to, understand the story on a minute level, and sort of give a lot of time and consideration to how to express that visually, whether it's through contrast or, you know, the motion or and how to support um, the director's vision. And oftentimes I really am hoping to, get to know the directors on a deeper level as a friend, as a person. And, hopefully you're expressing through the camera work something um, that you know about them, about who they are and what they are as an artist.
Mm.
And so, I think in this instance, this film really captures a lot about Jack. I mean, he wrote it. He obviously is very experienced as an actor and kind of comes to it with a knowledge of acting that a lot of people who are making their first project don't have. And
Hmm.
he has this sort of deep background in cinema and cinema history because of his job as an actor and also because of his background as a grandson of John Huston and great grandson of Walter Huston. And, he's got this kind of um, just sort of built-in knowledge and enthusiasm for cinema.
Hmm.
And so, the more that I got to work with him and collaborate with him and kind of, um, you become friends with people and you sort of, you want to put that on screen as much as you can. I feel really good that with the help of an amazing team, we were able to kind of execute that.
Oh, you
Uh,
guys, absolutely. Yeah, the team is so incredibly pivotal. It's like good luck. I mean, you could do everything personally as a filmmaker, but it would be one, miserable, and two, like it's just such an arduous task. But the team is everything in both filmmaking and fighting. I mean, like you cannot become a champion by yourself. You
no,
have to have a great coach. You have to have insanely amazing training, incredible training partners that are likely on the championship level as well. It's all about who you're training with. It's all about who you're working with.
100%. I mean, the first conversations I had with Jack about this movie, he was really clear from the start that he wanted to shoot in black and white. He had a real vision for how he wanted this film to look. And so we started watching movies and looking at street photography and kind of finding voice for the visuals. But he also, saw this as kind of an open experience for the actors. Like,
Mm.
I think he really wisely put performance first and
Yeah.
wanted to have kind of a looser approach to blocking and staging these things.
Mm-hmm.
And what was kind of unique to this project was that he also wanted to do all of these oneers. So on the one hand, you have this the challenge of not over staging things
Mm-hmm.
and on the other hand you have you want these kind of very articulate precise camera moves.
Mm-hmm.
you know um I was very lucky because I reached out to Jim McConkey and Anthony Capello, who run the camera crew for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel,
Mm-hmm.
and they're they're great. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no one better at moving the camera and making wonders happen. And so they came on as collaborators and brought an incredible team with them. And so we kind of became one happy family to sort of coordinate and almost improvise at times.
Yeah.
It's kind of shots that I didn't know if it would even really be feasible to pull off with a day's rehearsal. Sometimes this team can are so good that they can make that happen.
Yeah. The
Sometimes,
specialist.
yeah,
Man, when a good specialist comes in, it's just like, oh my gosh, it takes it to a whole other level. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, the Steadicam work in this was absolutely phenomenal. And there's something interesting about that, about the way in which a oneer can be liberating in the sense that like for the actor, they can keep on going and going. But also like in music, it's like it's almost as if it's compounding. Like the intensity is compounding or something. And I'm not quite sure. It's one of those things very difficult to articulate for me, but you can see that like actors that transition into directors make phenomenal directors usually because they know how to speak to actors because they are actors. And that was very apparent in this film.
Mhm.
Um, and you have been singled out for a lot of projects that are like very intimate, very personal. And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I think that combo is like you get that, you get the DP that's known for like real intense interpersonal relationships that are um how do I say vulnerable, you know?
Yeah.
And then you got the actor director who knows how to interact with actors. You get a killer actor like Michael Pitt. Oh my
He's,
gosh. Man, blown away by that
I,
guy.
that's a real big compliment. I'm glad that you noticed that. I definitely am drawn personally to things that are, emotional and intimate. Those are the kind of projects that I get the most, like, I don't know. I feel, I just am drawn to that. And so maybe that is the reason why I think Jack was that. And I had done a black and white film. I think that was maybe that combination of things was what led Jack to choose me for this project. And then I feel it was a really good collaboration in that way because we really aligned on that, and I
Hmm.
think that the story really is an emotional film. It's funny because, on its surface, it could look like a boxing film or a fight film. And that genre sets up a lot of expectations. And one of the things I love about our movie is that it's really, that framework exists, but you're going more into a very sort of emotional, vulnerable journey for uh, Michael's character. And I just think that, this film takes that framework, but then it's really not about the boxing in a way,
Yeah.
and it's so much more about his kind of personal journey, sort of forgiving himself and sort of uh, repairing um, past traumas
Hmm.
in the best he can, although often not perfectly.
Hmm.
And I just thought it was a really honest, sort of raw, emotional script.
Hmm.
And, it was also a story where, there's sort of like a sort of male character that's quite vulnerable,
Yeah.
and it's dealing with like fatherhood. And I, having just become a father not long before we made this, I was really on the top of my mind when I read
Hmm.
the script. And so I just instantly related to this material. And then you bring together, you know, it was a really good chemistry because you have Jack who's, now that I know him well enough, he's really an unstoppable kind of artist because he's just incredibly determined and very he's a great collaborator and he makes compromises well,
Hmm.
but he's very good at knowing, what's essential and
Hmm.
what he can't compromise.
Hmm.
And he also is just a very skillful, um, artist in that way. I mean, and very, I think, assured of his intentions and his instincts. And when you bring that together with me and with a crew that was really top notch, there's just sometimes it just feels like there's nothing you can't do. And so it was a really enjoyable experience to get to go in, and work with those guys like that.
Well, I mean, it's on the screen. It's you guys it's like a I feel like it's where things are headed. I think that we're going to have a lot of this sort of early 70s, early 90s sort of film community, small family productions or production families, production company families that are taking all the risks. Like this is a risky thing. Like I feel like what you guys are doing here is I think where things are headed. I think like you got these insanely talented artists that are going to take the risks. And it's like, Scorsese didn't ask anybody if they wanted to see Taxi Driver, right?
Yeah.
And you got all these sort of streaming services that are trying to guess what everybody wants to see. And it's like, just have the artist make the thing and let the people be surprised and enjoy it, you know?
Yeah, it's
And
been so gratifying. You're right. Like seeing everyone react to this film has been really gratifying because it is risky. And I mean, everyone involved took a lot of chances and invested themselves into something with so much heart. And so when that connects with an audience and you see people who are moved by it and you know, people get it, it's just so satisfying because you go, oh, this came in a very pure way from, Jack's imagination and from his sort of feelings to the screen. And there wasn't a lot of outside input or committees or anything.
yeah,
We just went and made it. And
yeah,
and that's so getting that out there is a risk, but it's also so gratifying.
yeah. I wanted to ask you because you briefly touched on how, becoming a father completely sort of, obviously it's a life-changing event. Can you talk a little bit about how that impacted your filmmaking? And, just why do you think it is, if you can pinpoint in your life, the influence that has happened to you that has caused it to show up in your work, that you're doing these very, vulnerable pieces? And then how has fatherhood sort of like, you know,
Sure.
influenced you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can sort of pinpoint a turning point in my career. I mean, I've just always loved movies, these kinds of movies. So that's one thing. But then, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity in Austin to work on Terrence Malick's Tree of Life as kind of a shooting some second unit around childhood. And this was before I became a parent. But uh, the experience of working for Chivo and kind of looking at the way that these master filmmakers that I admired so much,
Mhm.
Chivo and Lubeski, the way that they approached filmmaking was so thoughtful and, passionate and, you know, committed. And also, at the same time, it was very uh, streamlined and simple. We weren't really doing anything too crazy technically.
Mhm.
But um, but the ideas, Malik's ideas and Lubeski's ideas come through, and they really impacted people. So to get to be a part of something like that, where you are there watching it happen, and you're doing these things, and then afterwards, the way people are experiencing it
Mhm.
is so much connected to the intent and the idea of the artist. It just really changed the way I looked at movie making in so many ways. So for instance, there was a shot that we did on our little unit, handheld of a baby's foot and Jessica's hands
Yeah,
holding.
I
And
remember that.
this image became, one of the first posters, and a lot of people have really connected with the ideas behind that. But that was really Terry's idea. He told us the kind of thing that he wanted. And, I realized that the way that it was lit was very straightforward, but that the idea of motherhood and touch and connection is just so universal and so impactful that the feeling that you have about an image and the idea behind it can't be separated from the aesthetics very easily.
Mhm.
Something can be just as aesthetically pleasing, but have a completely different idea and not work.
Mhm.
And so it just kind of recentered me. I think sometimes you can get so, as a craftsperson, as a cinematographer or a camera person in general, you can become uh, so focused on technique and on, which lenses we're using and which camera and everything. And but when it comes to the audience, the most important thing is how they feel.
Mhm.
And so it just really something clicked in me after that experience. I mean, I don't know if I could have, there's no way not to be impacted by working
Right.
around these kind of incredible artists. And I just, really wanted to do more of that. And so it's not every day that something like this comes along where the material, you know, is as sort of thoughtful and touching and coming from an honest place, like a
Mhm.
very earnest kind of place. And it's not every day that you meet an artist like Jack who's so committed to it
Mhm.
and who also comes, committed to the visual side as well. So it was a real gift when I got this project and the opportunity to kind of just dive in and and put put my all into it.
I
And
was
you had asked about becoming a father. How did that impact things? I mean, do you have any kids?
no, no
Yeah.
kids.
Uh, I'm kind of, late to becoming a father, and it's just the best thing that's ever happened to me. And so I think this is probably sound cliche or something, but I'm sure that most people would say the same thing. It's like everything becomes about that,
Yeah, yeah,
After that point, everything you do really somehow goes back to, wanting to provide for and care for and protect and set a good example for that person. So,
yeah.
so yeah.
It's a real life shift. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I am essentially like a kind of an uncle a little bit because my drone pilot partner has two kids and they're absolutely hilarious. One of them's wicked smart, and the other one's just got a permanent smile. And so I'm always checking in on them, and it's just hilarious because they're always like, they'll come in on the phone and they'll be like, Rob. Um, but that dude, I mean, wow, what mentors to go into. That's incredible. Like I was going to ask you since you were in the Austin film scene about Terry Malick, and yeah, what a win. That's huge.
Oh, I mean, it was the best thing that could have, it's like a dream come true. And every day I just kind of didn't take it for granted. I really, paid attention and I've been very fortunate that, you know, to have that experience and to sort of have a little bit of that blessing,
Hmm, hmm.
and move forward with that kind of, you know, just being a witness to how they worked really changed everything for me. I had never seen anyone, I don't think before that. I've worked with many, many great cinematographers and filmmakers as a camera assistant and a camera operator before that. But when I was coming up, it seemed like, we would go into a situation and, you would say, this is the shot, we're looking at this building. So we need to put this uh, lift here and take the sun out
Mm.
and put two 18Ks over to put the sun over there. And it just seemed like everything took so long. And
Yeah,
sometimes the directors only ever had like a few minutes to do what they needed to do.
right.
And so it's just sort of really reoriented to me to a approach that was much more naturalistic and humane and hey, it looks really good over here. Why don't we, this is beautiful. Why are we shooting this over here when we could put Michael right here and, this would look great. And so just having that freedom, and that was something that, I don't always get to do. But Jack was really open to, that kind of collaboration of like, let's start with performance, let's see where it goes. And
Mhm.
then if there's an adjustment we can make to improve it,
Yeah.
we'll subtly do that. And then you have a crew that's very, has an incredible artistic vision of their own, and they're bringing that to the table and making, split second decisions that are great. And so yeah, it was a really fun. It was a lot like being in a band, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's what it seems like that. It seems like everybody's coming in with their own individual life experiences and just adding a ton of like flavor to the pot. Yeah.
Yeah,
The similarities between a really great jam band and filmmaking. But yeah, the Austin filmmaking scene with Terry specifically
yeah,
is really rich, and that's just such a great opportunity for you to have. How did that come about? Like, how did
yeah.
that opportunity come about for you?
Well, I had been working in Austin since I got out of UT
Hmm.
as a loader and a second AC and a first AC, and sort of had simultaneously been involved in music
Hmm.
and I'm working as a camera assistant for all these incredible cinematographers, Bruno Delbonnel, Dean Semler, Russell Boyd.
Mm,
And, I was a student of film and, getting to work with those people, always coming away with a lot of inspiration.
mm,
And at the same time, I had these friends who were in bands, and I would say, hey, I have a bunch of short ends, and I'm borrow my buddy's 35 millimeter camera. Let's go shoot a music video.
mm,
And so, in between working on set as camera assistant, I was also shooting on my own these music videos, oftentimes sort of spec things that we would get on MTV or whatever, and
mm,
but they were a chance to kind of practice some of the things that I was learning from these great um, filmmakers. And so I think what happened was when Terrence Malick was making Tree of Life, preparing the film, someone in the office had thought of me for this. They had, kids for 6 hours a day, and they wanted to be able to, if they weren't on set working with first team, they would come offset. And there was sort of a list of different things that uh, Terry wanted,
mm.
whether it was chasing bubbles or
Yeah, yeah.
swimming in the waterfall or, doing tug of rope. I mean, he just had a ton of different things that he was had in mind.
Mm,
And so there was this little unit that was devoted to basically to doing that. And
mm,
maybe it made more sense to get someone from Austin,
mm,
and someone thought of me because of my music videos or something, and I
mm,
had been shooting second unit. And very fortunately for me, I was working with another mentor, Daniel Pearl, ASC, who's an incredible cinematographer who's probably best known for Texas Chainsaw Massacre and and his incredible commercials and music videos that he did. Um, Billie Jean, and he did everything,
mm,
every iconic release, Every Breath You Take. I mean, anyway, he was nice enough to write a letter to Emmanuel Lubezki, sort of,
mm,
you know, signing off on me and sort of saying nice things about me.
mm,
And so I was very, very fortunate to get this job to come in and get to film all this stuff for these kids. And I just learned so much from the experience. I mean, these guys are incredible filmmakers. And
mm.
yeah, I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of things you said there in terms of like the reputation and the vouching process. It just seems like that is the most important thing, I think, in terms of like a mentor or somebody who comes beside you and says like this person can be a part of the team. This person can be a part of the band, you know? That's
Yeah.
great.
I mean, it was just great. And yeah, it's to this day one of the best. I mean, I've had a lot of great filmmaking experiences, but that's just one of the best. And
Hmm.
Austin has a really unique scene. I mean, it's pretty well known that we have the Austin Film Society, and you have, people like David Lowery and Richard Linklater and
Hmm.
Kat Candler and, Terrence Malick
Rich,
and
yeah.
yeah, and you've got Jeff Nichols and so there's a really it's best known. Austin's probably best known for the kind of auteur,
Hmm.
writer directors like that who are kind of,
Hmm.
I think Austin has a bit of a DIY film town
Hmm. Hmm.
feel, because of Slacker kind of came out. But yeah, Austin
Hmm.
ended up with this kind of hybrid community where we have a lot of different types of work, and then you have
Hmm.
these incredible auteurs who are, Robert Rodriguez, who are working a little with the Hollywood system, but a little bit of on their own. And
Hmm.
and you have a lot of incredible crew who are coming up in Austin, and just like in, I guess, a lot of the kind of film towns that wouldn't be LA or New York, you get work that's coming through from LA, so you get to work with terrific filmmakers from all over. But then there's also this kind of homegrown
Hmm.
aspect to it as well.
Yeah. That's exciting. I feel like LA has a very sort of transient vibe to it where people come and go so quickly. And yet Austin seems like you were saying, there's a little bit more of a grassroots sort of like community, I guess, if you would say that. Oh, well, that makes total sense. Like that you started out with them because it's like I was looking at some of your stuff with Fugitive Dreams and all that sort of stuff, and I was like, wow, this has a real like Bresson or Tarkovsky where you'll just like stick on something. And I didn't even know that about your influence with Malik and Chivo. That's just like it makes total sense because Tarkovsky is talking about how like essentially with these shots, you're and Terry does this too, where it's like it almost feels like a prayer, and that's what Day of the Fight felt like. It felt like we're having a personal conversation right now, where everything that's on this person's heart is being put on the screen, and you know exactly what he's going through. How do
I'm glad
you
you say that. That's great.
how when you're doing a scene like the scene with Michael Pitt and Pesci, which by the way I was like literally on the edge of my seat. I was like, how's this gonna play out? You know? Um, like how do you tread lightly? Like, what's that like for you?
Uh, well, I think that particular day, I mean, I definitely prioritize performance over anything as a cinematographer. I don't think that, I mean, obviously we want everything to be lit beautifully and framed beautifully, but I don't ever want to stand in the way of a great performance. And so, I think a lot of my thought process goes into how do I make this space for a scene like this that's delicate, and make
Mm,
sure that we're not imposing kind of like or distracting from that in any way with our process on set.
mm-hmm.
So for that scene, and as an example, um, there were a number of things going on that day. It was our second day of production, and so we had I think we had Joe for a very limited window of time, something like four hours, from
Mm-hmm.
the moment he showed up to when he left. And we had to shoot a whole nother scene, this scene that in the taxi that happens at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And and then also it's this big emotional moment for Michael's character. And so it was a challenge. And what we decided to do was to stage it in this. We went into a real sort of home there. We were shooting in an authentic place. You can kind of see when the camera passes through the hallways.
Mm-hmm.
So it had a lot of feel there, a lot of atmosphere, and we lit largely with practicals. We did bounce some light outside the window, but there wasn't a lot on the ground in the room, and we had three cameras, so we had basically covered the scene in continuity, getting Joe's coverage and um, Michael's coverage at the same time, and then maybe dropping back for a wide,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and and in this way they could really focus on performance, do it a number of times, and we quietly change the lenses and get a different size. Um, but again, we had a really skillful crew that could make that work
Mm-hmm.
without being in each other's way, and I'm really glad with how it turned out. I feel like um, it's beautiful to look at, but I think that the most important thing is that you have this incredible performance from Michael. And
Oh, dude. Heartbreaking.
yeah,
Heartbreaking. I went up to him afterwards and I was talking to him about that and I was like, because I was interviewing all these large heavyweight fighters, that were breaking down and crying about their relationship with their fathers and stuff like that. I was like, you um did something that was like it could have like there's it's such a unique thing because it could become cliche and yet he made the character complex and he made the character complicated and rich and deep, you know what I mean? And he didn't play the he didn't play the victim. You know what I mean? Like he was like, I'm a man, I'm a champion, and I still wish that I had your respect. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, that's so good because that's exactly what I got from these heavyweights. These heavyweights were like, what else can I do? Like I've done it all. I've beaten everybody. Like, why aren't you appreciating me? You know?
Yeah, I mean that's the crux of the scene, and I think it really works too because of Joe's presence. I mean, Joe Pesci is an actor that carries. I think Jack would always says he carries so much sort of gravitas as an actor because just because of his personal charisma, but also because of his background in other movies.
Yeah.
He's able to come in, in this scene where he would have been kind of a abusive father, or a
Mm,
negligent father figure. And yet in this scene he's suffering from dementia and can't even speak.
hmm
And so it's this kind of incredible moment where you have this actor on screen who comes with all this background
mm,
and sort of gravity as a performer and anchors the scene emotionally. And then you have, Michael who's just pouring it all out in the most beautiful way.
hmm And
And
yeah,
I
it was such a powerful scene. I was sitting on the edge of my seat just hoping that he was going to be able to say something, you know, that Pesci's character would be able to like, and it was just like, oof, yeah, strong. You had mentioned like just how you had this team that was just, you know, working in unison for that scene. How do you how do you go about picking your team? Like, how does that happen?
Well, I always try and tailor, the work to the director. So, I start by listening to what the director wants. And,
Mm,
Jack was really clear and about the approach he wanted to take, this kind of fluid approach where we would be responsive to performance and to the actors, and this kind of idea of shooting with fluid camera work where we were moving and sometimes in unbroken shots. And
mm,
so it was a really ambitious thing to do. I think we had 20 days for the schedule, and it was a tier two movie shooting in New Jersey in the winter. And so I was really uh, invested in finding the best team that I could. And it happened that on Instagram I saw that uh, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel was rapping.
mm,
And another one of my mentors shoots that show, David Mullen, who's an
mm.
incredible
Oh,
photographer.
yeah, awesome. I love
Yeah,
how I see him running around with his camera all the time. He's just like snapping photos. It's hilarious.
he's incredible. And so obviously, I looked at the work that they're doing on this show, and I thought, oh man, here's a show that's rapping. These guys are, finished with it. This project and ours is just starting.
Mm,
And our Steadicam operator, our A camera operator, Jim McConkey, is kind of a legendary operator. I mean, I think he's well known as one of the best. Him and his brother work as a team oftentimes, and so I didn't know if they would be too, sort of up for doing an indie movie in the cold in New Jersey.
mm,
But I reached out to him and sent him the script and invited him to read it, and he was drawn to the material and fortunately, willing to do it. And then you need a focus puller who can
mm,
handle this kind of project. I mean, we're not going to get a lot of takes. We really are shooting on the fly.
mm,
And um, and so Anthony Capello, who works with Jim on the show, I talked to him, and he, had I think he rightfully had reservations because they had been working for quite a
mm,
long time on this series, and um, definitely was not their full rate, and stuff like that. And not that that was his concern that he expressed, but it's a lot to ask.
mm,
Um, but boy, did these guys, when they got involved in the project, I mean, boy, did they bring so much expertise and dedication to it and artistry and everything. And so, you asked how do I select the team? I think I look at what does the project need?
Mhm.
What who can we partner with who's going to be a good fit creatively with what we're trying to do,
Mhm.
and who's, I love a team that is experienced. I like an experienced team if possible, you know. And so yeah, I think bringing on the the crew, the team around you, is really the sort of the most important um, part of my process,
Mhm.
because in a way it's like casting the movie,
Mhm.
that you're casting the team that's gonna support the vision of this director. And um, yeah, so I mean, in this case, I think we we got the right people.
It's like you
Uh,
assembled the Avengers.
yeah.
There's a couple of things I wanted to ask you about, and it was one of them was the Nicolette Robinson is phenomenal in this, and the walkout scene when we keep cutting back to her singing. What was that like? The shooting of
Oh, yeah.
that scene, and how did you draw on your history with music videos, and everything for that? Because that was just like you guys just interwove that beautifully.
Yeah, Jack wanted to do it. Originally, he wanted to shoot that, and we did actually shoot it in one unbroken shot that kind of goes over the tables from a
Mm,
wide shot and pushes all the way in. And then,
yeah.
and Nicolette is amazing. And honestly, uh, it was one of the most emotional scenes to film because of her delivery. I mean, every single take was flawless. And I mean, she's, you know, crying on camera every time. It was unreal, and so, I remember at the end of that day, Jack and I, sort of being like, wow, I think we really did something there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was again, it was a good teamwork to create the atmosphere in that little restaurant. And then, just don't get in the way of a good performance. Don't get in the way of a good idea that
Hmm.
somebody has. If we have um if we have a five-star team,
Hmm.
and somebody on the team has an idea about how to approach it, you know,
Hmm.
we're gonna we're gonna do that unless there's some, real reason not to,
Hmm.
because you want to empower the artists that you're working with to bring their best.
Hmm.
And I always believe that people do their best when they feel creatively engaged and respected.
Hmm. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you had mentioned the Austin Cinematography Group. You had these incredible mentors that came beside you and helped bring you along and sort of shaped your craft. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with the Austin Cinematography Group?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking about that. I'm really proud of the film community that I come from in Texas. I mean, Austin, we were talking about earlier, has a very unique um, filmmaking kind of milieu. It's like this kind of incredible gift to get to be part of it, because there's a lot of very experienced people, and there's a lot of kind of auteur filmmakers, and then there's a lot of people who are just really inspired, who are making films and doing indies and doing shorts and doing music videos. And, at some point we realized we're all kind of connecting with one another over social media and Instagram. And wouldn't it be better if we just all got together and, built some community that way?
Hmm.
And and it's an opportunity for us to kind of build community. You're available if someone um, is looking for a piece of gear or some advice on how to do something, we
Mm-hmm.
have one another to go to. So we've built the Austin Cinematography Group as a place where we could kind of have an online forum and also in-person meetings to socialize and kind of get to know each other and support one another. And then also, we've had workshops where, whether it's post-production color or, a film workshop on how to, work with 35 millimeter or AC workshops and things like
Mm-hmm.
that to just kind of help build the craft in Austin. And I think we also sort of, have this goal of branding Austin as a cinematography place,
Mm-hmm.
and building community around it, kind of in the way that, I've always seen, um, Poland has this real attention to cinematography. There's the film
Mm-hmm.
school there, and there's the camera image, and I would love to see Austin grow as a place where people see cinematography coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe new ideas kind of coming from. And there's so many talented um, people around the photographic arts in Austin, who are just like flourishing and really creating great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really nice to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a incredible creative epicenter for sure. I have a dear friend named Olivia Applegate who is over there in the mix. I think she's working with like Trey Schultz on a couple of films. It was Krishna or something like that. But
Wow.
but yeah, it's a hotbed for sure.
Drew
Um,
Daniels did that film,
yeah,
and now he's being recognized for Anora,
yeah, yeah.
and his work with Sean Baker. So that's another great Austin filmmaker who's out there doing cool stuff.
That's the ticket. If you're in Austin, you gotta get hooked up with the Austin
Yeah, come
Cinematography
on
Group.
down. Come down.
Yeah. Um, oh, Fry Bread and Me. I wanted to talk to you about Fry Bread and Me.
Yeah.
How'd you get involved with that? And my brother was born on the Navajo Indian Reservation, and
Okay.
so my mom was a physician, and we were born in Arizona, or my brother was, and so it's a very we have a lot of aunt and uncles that are Navajo. We love them, and I was just wondering, like, so how did that come about? How did you get involved in that?
Yeah, I got a script from the director Billy Luther, and it was a Sundance Labs project. So it was uh, a low budget, indie project, but it was coming up in, I think, set in Winslow, Arizona, but we were shooting mostly in New Mexico.
Hmm.
And, I just really loved meeting Billy and the story. And I saw it as a great opportunity for me to get to participate in um, a project that was very authentic, coming from a really personal and fresh place,
Hmm.
and that maybe otherwise I wouldn't, being with my background, I wouldn't necessarily have a window into.
Hmm.
So I felt really privileged to get the opportunity to, go and work with Billy and, help see this movie, come to life. And it was a great experience because Billy's a great, very thoughtful,
Hmm.
smart person. It's also a very soulful
Hmm.
um, human story that, like I said, I love that kind of story that is something that really is personal and real and honest.
Hmm.
And I love the setting too. You have a New Mexico's beautiful,
Oh yeah.
and the people that we're photographing are all, really beautiful. And so it just was like, oh, this is something I really get to do here, photograph uh, this story and these people in this place,
Hmm.
and work with Billy. And that was a very rewarding experience because, again, I mean, it was like, I think we had something like 17 or 18 days, maybe 20 days.
Hmm.
And we were working with kids. So there's uh, two kids who are the center of the story, and they're in almost every scene.
Hmm.
you have limited hours working with kids, and we're shooting on a distant location. So, very, very tight schedule to make this all happen. And I couldn't really be more proud of how it turned out. I think it's a beautiful film. I think it's um, something important and different than is available. And
Yeah.
and so yeah, I'm really, really proud of it.
It sounds like you're I think I think that this is sort of where things are going. It's like you're on the forefront of where things are going, where people are going to start taking the films that matter to them. And you were talking a little bit about how one of the operators that you were reaching out to for Day of the Fight and how, they were overworked essentially. How do you fight personally burnout, and how do you get restored? Like when you take a project like this that sort of refuels you and recharges you, like what's the sort of methods that you have implemented over the years to avoid burnout?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I love my craft. I do love the craft. So I've always sort of thought that, work in some ways is easier than real life. Because there's very well-defined hours, you get paid, um, it's very clear what you're supposed to do. So I really love I love the craft. So first of all, no matter what I'm working on, whether it's a commercial or a movie or whatever. I just enjoy the craft. I enjoy the collaboration. So, um, and there's natural ebbs and flows in our industry. I mean, you do get times when things are just all happening at once, and then there's
Mm,
times when you maybe have a break and you're wondering when the next thing is. And so in a weird way, there's always some balance in it. And so I just enjoy, especially now that I have a family of my own. It's like when I have downtime, I just have the most beautiful time with my family. And if I'm able for them to come, like they came with me to New Mexico when I made
mm,
Red Face and Me, and they were there in New York as well
mm,
for part of it, for Day of the Fight. So just sort of balancing, trying to find that work life balance is hard in our industry.
mm,
I don't know if I can do it perfectly, but I try to really be grateful when I'm working, because I do think having burnout is kind of like a privilege in a way, because I know there's many people who would rather be working and burned out than, if in our industry, because it can be fickle.
mm.
I always take it as I'll take it when it comes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's hysterical. Let me just ask you about Tim Stippen because I love Tim
Yeah,
Stippen. He's great. How was your
he's
experience working with Tim?
I mean, he's brilliant. Thank God he came and did the work, and he kept me from going off the deep end on this. I'll simplify the story to that. But he definitely landed the plane and made a beautiful impact on the film. And but also I had worked with him previously on another movie called The Perfect Guy,
Hmm.
and he's a great collaborator, and obviously one of the best. And
Yeah.
so we were really lucky that he came on board on this project. I mean, it was especially because it was challenging in some ways. It's like a indie project, when they don't have
Mm,
a lot of times when you get to post-production,
mm,
these kinds of budgets, everything has been spent. So it's like,
mm, mm,
here's what we've got for color, and trying to make that work, so that we get just enough time with with the colorist. But he's an all-in collaborator. He brought so much to it. He's brilliant. Have you worked with him?
I've been friends with him for a while. I love that guy. He
Yeah,
cracks me
he's
up.
great. I mean, you could ask him. He'll tell you this story, but he definitely kept me from losing my mind at a certain point.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Like what?
Well, it was just, gosh, I don't know if I can. Yeah, just it was a challenging movie in many ways. I mean, we called the whole Jack jokes that we called it the fight of the day. uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because every day there was like a new challenge, and that really persisted all the way through post-production.
Mm,
And what's great about working with someone like Tim is he's so assured and knowledgeable and skillful and like such an artist kind of his own that
mm.
can really anchor things when you're very limited on time to execute a vision. And um so yeah, he's great. I cannot say enough good things about him.
Yeah, he's great. I love watching him do his thing because it's like watching. I have a friend, a composer friend, who's just this masterful piano prodigy. And watching Tim at the board is very much like that. He's just like, oh,
Yeah.
got this, you know?
Well, they're like the pilot of the plane. You go in and you can't you might be like, I want to go to Memphis, but you really rely on that person to get you there.
Right.
And he's somebody who can, and he can land the plane. He's like he's and he gets to and also I'll just say that, he he really delivered what Jack wanted to, and it's
Hmm.
like this kind of silver gelatin kind of look to the film that's almost kind of like a little bit higher contrast than
Hmm.
a lot of contemporary black and white films. And yeah, Tim just he's just brilliant.
Well, I guess we can wrap it up. I just wanted to say thank you so much, man, for taking the time this morning. I really, really, really appreciate talking to you.
Yeah. Oh,
It's been super, super insightful. Day of the Fight is remarkable. You guys knocked it out of the park. I still have so many questions for you, but I don't want to like take up your entire day. So hopefully we can do a part two at some point down the road. Um, but yeah, just absolutely powerful stuff.
thank
And
you.
and
Yeah, thanks so much for all the research you did about this, and for all of the support for the film, and for asking great questions. And it's cool to meet. I'm sure we'll cross paths sometime in the field.
it's a small circle, it's like we've got a lot of mutual friends. So yeah, I always think that's fascinating because it is such a tiny circle that when you're like, oh, this guy has worked with like all these other friends of mine, it's like, oh, I should probably know this person. So um but yeah, remarkable, remarkable stuff. And I loved hearing the background about the Austin community and everything. And congrats on the kiddos and everything.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Well, I look forward to the next time.
Yeah, appreciate you, dude.
Take it easy.
Peace, brother. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Getting Made. Hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you next year.